During the so-called golden age of Hollywood, the era between the 1920s and the late 1940s, big studios like 20th Century Fox held unchallenged power over its stars and directors. All the while, movies had an unrivaled hold on the public's imagination. One such star who came of age during the studio system was popular leading man Tyrone Power. Fox studio head Darryl F. Zanuck thought him the perfect candidate for flashy, colorful adventure films, and audiences enthusiastically agreed. In 1940, Tyrone Power made box office history when he starred in The Mark of Zorro, the first of the great Power swashbucklers. By the time he was slated to appear as Benjamin Blake in Son of Fury 2 years later, he was an even bigger draw and one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. Celebrated director John Cromwell was assigned to the picture, while his wife, actress Kay Johnson, was given a supporting role in the film.
My father, John Cromwell, was the director. He directed, I don't know how many, 57 films in Hollywood, and as far as I know, this is the only picture he did with Zanuck. I didn't check them all. He may have done some others.
Under Cromwell's able direction, the filming moved along at a solid pace, and the two got along famously.
Well, usually, my father took responsibility for every element, and he would have rehearsed. He liked to block. He shot very economically. He made very interesting choices if he had a good cameraman. And in that way, he was actually editing the film. This was before storyboarding, because he understood the editing process and had a very clear, he was very visual and understood what he wanted. And Tyrone Power had a wonderful way of never exceeding the material. I mean, he doesn't violate the material. You know, he doesn't show it up, and he doesn't overdo. So it's really nicely placed.
Starring opposite Power for the first time was one of Fox's newest discoveries, Gene Tierney.
Gene Tierney was another one of Tyrone's leading ladies that I thought he worked very well with. They started out together in Son of Fury when she was not speaking English. She was absolutely outrageously beautiful and speaking this, babble as an island girl, and they made a wonderful couple.
M-E. Me.
Me?
No, me.
Oh, me.
Yes, that's right.
The film was sprinkled with some of the greatest character actors and actresses in the business. Veteran performer Kay Johnson notwithstanding.
She had a great quality. They played very well together. She does have a nice scene with Power after the fight when she ministers to him.
Ben, I have no right to tell you this. After all, he is my husband. But I'm sure, as sure as we hope for salvation, that he's robbed you. That Breatham is rightfully yours. I have no proof, Ben, except what is in my heart and what I remember of your father. But proof there must be, and someday you will find it. And when you do, I want you to know that I will help you.
Why?
Because had my prayers been answered, you would have been my son.
But I think the first interview with Dudley Diggs is the best in the picture. Dudley Diggs did what many good characters are capable of doing. He really made a meal of it.
Now, you want to be confirmed in a title and estates to which you may have no legal right, and to be pardoned by the king for a hanging offense.
Aye.
Well, it is a modest request.
That's my favorite scene. My favorite scene, it's the one that Power looks most present, most listening, most trying to suss this guy out. And then the whole thing about the pearls, the ambivalence, is he going to do it beautifully, beautifully set up?
Is there enough there?
Which reminds me that my fee will be 2,000 pounds.
I'll pay you 5,000 if you ask.
Boil me, sir. Will you haggle with me? When I make a price, I hold to it. Now, I want some details.
I happen to think that that last kiss in Son of Fury is one of the hottest things going. And I always laugh when people will sometimes say he was a little wooden. Forget about it. That last kiss is just absolutely fantastic.
The marriage between Tyrone Power and period adventure films continued well into the decade. In 1944, Zanuck purchased the rights to the best-selling novel Captain from Castile. He imagined the property a perfect vehicle for Power. As a result, no expense was spared. Fox heaped the 1947 production with sprawling locations, magnificent costumes, and vibrant Technicolor.
Captain from Castile was made in Mexico, and it was a huge film shot in Technicolor. They used 1,000 extras. It was amazing. The end of the film, if you look, there's a volcano erupting. It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, you couldn't possibly have timed it any better. It's quite spectacular. Gene Peters was his co-star. For some reason, Mr. Zanuck cast him opposite a lot of these like starlets, Wanda Hendricks, Cecil Aubrey, and Gene Peters was a great find, and she was wonderful. So he was very fortunate there. They worked very well together.
Tyrone was thrilled when fellow contract player Cesar Romero, who had been a close friend since his arrival at Fox, was brought in to co-star with him.
He and Cesar Romero were best friends, and Cesar Romero's nickname was Butch, and they all lived in the same neighborhood. And the story goes that when Tyrone was going to make his big airplane goodwill trip, he walked into a commissary or something and said, "Butch, do you want to go on a plane trip with me?" And Romero looked up and said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm serious. I want to go."
To top it all off, he was surrounded by supreme talent behind the camera, including director Henry King, who had guided Power to a star-making performance in his first major role at the studio.
Tyrone worked, I believe, 10 times with Henry King, who was responsible for his being cast in Lloyd's of London. And Henry King is known as kind of a moderate director. He did a great job with epics, battle scenes, so he was perfect for Captain from Castile. And I guess it was a long filming and very successful.
While filming Captain from Castile, Power's personal life was taking an emotional turn. He was in the process of securing a divorce from his wife, actress Annabella. The two had been drifting apart since his return from World War II.
Tyrone was very, very changed by the war, as I think a lot of men were. He actually saw Hiroshima after the bombing and could not even describe it in letters. It was so overpowering. And he didn't talk a lot about his war experiences. He was not a person who could ever deal with any kind of conflict. He avoided it at all costs.
But the good-looking movie star didn't stay single for very long. By 1949, Power was involved with beautiful starlet Linda Christian. The two were married in Rome that same year, and the wedding was like a movie in itself.
Well, my husband had written Ty's next movie. So we flew to Rome. It was the whole Tyrone power. It was the whole Hollywood wedding in Rome. If you had ever been in Rome with Tyrone Power, every single night when we would leave the Excelsior Hotel to go to dinner somewhere, there would be 5,000 people as you drove up. Thousands, all screaming his name. He was the biggest star in the world.
Aside from his wedding, Power was in Italy for another important reason. He had to work.
Prince of Foxes was made in Italy with, I believe, what they call blocked funds. And it was on location, and Tyrone begged Daryl Zanuck to make it in color. But I think there just wasn't enough money to actually make it in color. The locations are spectacular in that. The great halls, it was unbelievably beautiful. The Italian countryside and the castles, and it would have been a magnificent color movie. And Tyrone plays Andrea Orsini, who's kind of a worm.
I know that Borgia sent you here for some evil purpose. I've asked you here to give you warning. My husband is...
Your husband again?
If any harm should come to my husband through you, I will hate you unto the death. I promise you I know how to hate.
Or love? The twin of hate?
Do not betray his hospitality. There will be peace between us so long as you act peaceably.
The movie was also the first of two films Power made back-to-back with legendary actor and director Orson Welles. The following year, they worked together in The Black Rose.
Orson Welles and Tyrone went way back to Catherine Cornell's company, so they knew each other way back, but Orson Welles did those small parts for money to finance his own film projects, and he was wonderful in them, but it was extremely technical because he basically would just phone them in, which he could do because he was a master technician.
Although his films continued to be big hits at the box office, Tyrone longed for different kinds of roles. However, Zanuck refused to see that his star was gracefully aging.
To Daryl Zanuck, Tyrone Power was the boy that starred in Lloyd's of London in 1936, and apparently, as far as Zanuck was concerned, he never changed. These films were the way that Zanuck wanted to see him, and the way the audience had been taught to see him were in these adventure, swashbuckling movies.
Until his untimely death in 1958, Tyrone continued to power through a wide range of roles. Yet today, audiences affectionately remember him as the daring, chivalrous rogue, always up for a sword fight to protect his name or his lady-in-waiting. It is this romantic notion that conjures up an image of a timeless hero of the ages, an image that will thankfully live on with the unforgettable performances of Tyrone Power on film.
I must say The Tom Cruise of that day was Tyrone Power. We were all in love with him.
Well, all I can tell you is that he was the love of my life. When I was a young girl, I adored him, and he was a divine man.
I grew up on Tyrone Power. I mean, I was in grammar school, junior high, and high school. I thought he was the most gorgeous man I'd ever seen.
I could not forget my schoolgirl crush on Ty, and that's probably not how absolutely gorgeous he was and how romantic. I thought he was the most handsome man I'd ever seen.
During his prolific film career, screen legend Tyrone Power spent nearly 30 years under exclusive contract to 20th Century Fox Studios. And throughout that time, he was teamed with some of the most glamorous and alluring female stars that ever glistened in the cinema firmament. His roster of feminine co-stars reads like a who's who of the golden age of Hollywood. Rita Hayworth, Loretta Young, Betty Grable, Gene Tierney, Joan Fontaine, Alice Faye, Linda Darnell, and Academy Award winner Patricia Neal.
Tell me the truth, Michael. Who's the woman? Who you mixed up with or what?
Oh, you ought to keep away from me.
How can I? I simply can't. You started by arousing a mother instinct in me, and now you got the whole works stirred up. And you've got something stirred up.
His was a powerful combination of startling good looks and a stellar acting range. And the actresses who played opposite him were no different. With each one, he had met his match. The romantic chemistry created on screen set hearts aflutter all over the world. Now, with remarkable candor, 4 of his legendary leading ladies speak about their love and respect for this underrated actor.
I remember the first time I met him. I had gone to visit a cousin in New York City, and I was all of 17, and we were just walking up Fifth Avenue one day, and I said, "There he is!" And I left my cousin standing, and there's who? Little did I realize then, because I had gone to New York to go on the stage, that, 5 years later, I was playing opposite him and playing love scenes opposite him.
I'm gonna have that drink.
Good. I bought your favorite brand of scotch here.
Well,
I'll find it for you. It's right down here. There it is.
You think of everything, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Bourbon, too?
Bourbon, too. 2 cases in the kitchen.
What else?
This.
I wasn't nervous about kissing Tyrone Power. I could not wait. When Darryl Zanuck saw the rushes, he called Ty on the set and he said, who was swallowing who in that kiss? He said, "That's the greatest kiss."
Alan.
Did anyone see you come in here?
Oh, Alan, I don't know, and it makes no difference.
But it does make a difference, a very great difference.
I had to talk to you.
But now, at this hour, here, like this?
Yes, now. Please, Alan. Father's sending me away.
My first scene with him was a love scene where I was kissing him. It's a wonder I didn't pass out. So I'm waiting on the set. He comes on the set, and we're ready to start a love scene. I haven't even met him yet. I was so embarrassed. And he just acted like he didn't notice. He said to the director, Henry King, he said, "Henry, do you mind if Miss Moore and I said, Terry, if Terry and I go off and rehearse?" He said, "I just don't know my lines," which was not true. I mean, that's how kind and wonderful he was. Kissing Tyrone Power was unforgettable. I tell you, I had one more scene that was the last scene, so I only got to kiss him, the first day of shooting and the last. And I was swooning.
How would I ever think that I would star in a movie with Tyrone Power? I mean, that's beyond belief. In 7th grade, I dreamt of being in his arms. You know, I used to dream about being a movie actress and working with him, but it was only a dream, it was imagination.
I don't know. I'm not scared anymore. I don't know what it is. But I'll be all right in a minute.
Sure. Nothing's gonna hurt you as long as Stan's around.
I know it. You're terrific. Stan, we shouldn't do this.
But to be in his arms and to be kissed by him was something that was just the epitome of everything romantic that every woman would give their eye teeth or more to enjoy.
And I are just friends, that's all.
Stan, you don't have to lie to me.
He was a gentleman, a perfect gentleman, and a lovely, lovely man. It was wonderful.
Beyond his dashing smile and handsome physique, Tyrone Power displayed an amazing range of capabilities as an actor. In fact, he took his craft very seriously.
Who is it?
Your old bellboy. Pick up the tray. Come in. Yeah, something wrong?
What do you mean, something wrong?
Food, you haven't touched it.
I'm not hungry.
Hey, look, mister, it ain't none of my business, but we got a pretty good doctor down the street there. You want me to call him for you?
What makes you think I want a doctor?
No, we never thought about his acting. It was his looks and his sex appeal that appealed to us young girls. But when I worked with him, I realized that he was one darn good actor. And I don't think he got credit for
Boss's
it.
daughter.
Is that the only reason?
How can you be after asking a question like that? And yourself as pretty as a bay filly in a field of clover?
He loved to act. I mean, it was so funny. He would say to me that all the time, he would, you know, people that seemed to have everything, and he'd look at me and he'd say, yes, but they can't act. They can't act. Like, what good was money and everything else in the world if you couldn't act?
He was so beautiful that people never gave him credit for being the actor that he was. And that's why he was so anxious to do Nightmare Alley.
Well, you're a fine one. Running off in the middle of the show. Zena was sore.
I couldn't help it. She's got me on a diet.
Nightmare Alley and Razor's Edge. He loved those. They were his favorite movies, and I'm surprised he didn't get a nomination or Academy Award. Today he would have gotten an Academy Award for them. I think it was because he was so handsome that people didn't, you know, realize what a wonderful actor he was.
And what a magnificent performance that was. Stanton Carlyle is a password of mentalists and magicians. They all hold that character in high regard, and they love this movie.
I have another question here. Are you ready?
Yes.
Can you tell me how this question is signed?
It is signed Mother.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, he was a great leading man, wasn't he? He really was fabulous. I don't think he had the one big role, do you? I really don't think he did. But he was very good in films. I'm just so sorry he died at such an early age.
Tyrone Power was only 44 years old when he died during the making of the film Solomon and Sheba in November of 1958. His son, Tyrone Power Jr., was born 3 months later.
You know, I think he did have a premonition that he was going to die young. One night he'd said, you know, I've had such a wonderful life. If I died tomorrow, I'd have no regrets. And he said, no, that's not true. He said, I'd like to die on stage like my grandfather and great-grandfather did, and father. I think they all died on stage, and have a son. And he did die on stage on a set, and he did have a son later. but I thought he got every wish he ever wanted.
I felt that I'd been released from my body, that I was suspended in midair. That all the things that had been confused before suddenly became clear to me. I had a sense of knowledge more than human. I felt that I'd broken away and was free. I felt that if it lasted another minute, I'd die.
What was so exciting about Ty? I had the distinct impression that his feet never touched the floor. And he had an aura of glamour or romanticism and handsomeness about him.
I think my mother said it the best to Tyrone Power when she said, "Tyrone, you're as beautiful on the inside as you are the out." I never saw a person who cared more for people. He was not only charming, but he was kind. He was the kindest person I ever met. He cared.
Magical star. He had the quality. You know, stars are not made, but stars are born. And Ty was, well, he was the biggest star in America in his period.
All I know about the early childhood of my father is that he spent a lot of time alone with his sister and with his mother because his father was always on tour or working in the movies in Hollywood, and they were being raised a lot by their mother. And so he got a lot of schooling on acting because she was an actress, a theater actress, but she was also a teacher. She taught acting. And so he got natural schooling, and he was always there in camerini, how do you say? Dressing rooms, and watching her from the side of the stage. And so at a very, very early age, he was introduced to the whole business. He came from an actor's family, that's for sure, but it goes back many generations because his great-grandfather was an actor on stage in Ireland. Not only an actor, but he also was a playwright.
There was a company in New York that our grandfather got our father taken into that actually Catherine Cornell was part of that company. And he was taken on as like an understudy to the understudy and sort of started proving himself and landed a couple of roles in that. And it was at that point that someone associated with the company knew of a casting situation in California, and that was when he went out and actually went out to Fox. From what I've heard, there was a lot. He had a little bit of an entree because of this letter from the company in New York, but a lot of it had to do with right place, right time. They were looking for fresh young faces, and he went into an office just as bold as can be and presented himself, and they were impressed with him and gave him a shot.
I heard he landed that little part in Girls' Dormitory, and he was just one of the many actors in a bit part, but apparently all these letters started flooding the studio from fans saying, "Who was that guy in the background there?" And so they looked to see who it was, and it was Daddy, and then they started giving him little bigger roles and focusing on him.
Well, they had comment cards in the theaters back then, you know, for the public to write down, and they got a little bit of a clue when none of the comments had anything to do with the stars of the movie. It was all about who's this young guy in the one scene, you know, holding the girl's hand. So they thought they'd better put him in something else.
But I think that the one who gave him the big break was Henry King, who gave him the first big break, his first real acting role, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Lloyd's of London. That's it, Lloyd's of London. In that one, he came out like really, really strong. And I mean, there was a whole series of movies in the late 30s that just one after another, boom, boom, boom. I don't know what it was, whether it was the combination, no, of the script and the lighting and the way they had decided already that he was going to be the star, so they just focused on building that up. But there was a natural attraction from, especially the female public toward him. They were just drawn to him.
It's because he was so good looking. I mean,
Look who's talking. Look who's talking.
But what they didn't know is that he had a solid acting background as well. He'd been coached by his mother. It wasn't just the good looks.
Well, he had that little gap between his teeth, and then his eyebrows, like mine, if I don't tweeze them, grew together, and Zanuck said he looked like a scared monkey. And Henry King said, no, you got to use him. You got to use him. He's great. And Zanuck's wife also said, honey, you're crazy. Use this kid. And so they convinced Zanuck, and then the rest was just, every time he did anything, the comments were just, oh my God.
Tyrone was very friendly with Zanuck, and I think that Mrs. Zanuck was infatuated by him. And they came to our home. Oh, it was a very pleasant relationship.
Yeah, they had a pretty good back and forth. I've heard a couple of stories of them pranking with each other too, because I know this is true. During while they were shooting Zorro, my father, in one scene, there was one scene where they left it. You know, they usually take out the joke stuff, the gag reel or whatever, but they left it in for a screening for Zanuck, where they had set up the scene where the townspeople run up to the, and find the Z etched somewhere, and one of the frightened villagers turns and goes, Zorro. And instead they had the guy find the Z and turn around and go, Zanuck, Daryl Zanuck. And they left it in the reel, and Zanuck was in the screening room and screamed and, power, I'll get you. And got him back by shutting off the heater to his swimming pool. My father used to take these swims in the morning, so Zanuck had somebody go up and shut off the heater, so when he jumped in the pool, it would be freezing cold the next morning. So they a little back and forth.
Yeah, I had heard in another scene, in one of the carriage scenes, where he takes whatever it is from the people in the carriage. Instead of just the Z, he had put the D and the Z.
No, the D and the Z. Yeah.
Daryl Zanuck,
Pretty good. I don't think many actors could have gotten away with that. I think Zanuck might have thrown him off the...
I think so.
You look at the early movies, and he was just so pretty, just so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And they kind of tended to put him in a lot of similar roles in the beginning. And as he went along, and the acting was always important to him. I think that was instilled by, sort of the family heritage and all that. But as he got to have a little more clout at the studio, he started looking for better roles and even insisting on having them put him in different things, because that was important to him. I've always had a sense that it was very important to him to really be taken seriously as an actor and not just a matinee idol. And he became, was very good friends with Olivier, and so impressed, as who wasn't, with Olivier's acting ability and whatnot. He really, it was important to him to really become a good actor, I think.
Also Orson Welles. He was very good friends with Orson Welles.
And Welles too.
He seemed to just lap it up like a little puppy dog. Just immediately he was able to know the lines and the scene. I was amazed at the memory he had.
Well, I know I've got a couple of scripts of his, and there's some pretty copious notes in some of them. I mean, he really broke the script down and took his time. There's some really very interesting reading the notes, because he really took time to break everything down and not miss anything.
He loved filming and working on the stage. That's what he really was aiming for, to be the best. Yeah, especially with so many people wanting to do the same thing. Yeah, he was a very ambitious actor. That was his dream, to be able to do any part that he chose to do. That gave him the greatest satisfaction.
He had a passion for books. He liked to collect first limited edition, and and his book plate had an airplane, movie reels. No, what was it? And books. Right?
Yeah.
Those were his three passions. And I was thinking when you were asking about him as an actor or whatever, and I was thinking of him as a pilot. Because to this day, I still have him fly all the planes that I get on. I put him in the pilot seat and I say, get me where I need to go. So, yeah, I think about him a lot.
We did a lot of flying around.
Howard Hughes used to wake him up in the middle of the night to go flying over L.A.
Really? He bought a
Say,
plane
come
off
out
for
with me,
fun.
let's go. They just do circles over L.A. and talk in the middle of the night.
He bought a plane off Howard Hughes, and then he changed the fuel tanks too, and he flew all around South America and all around Africa with it. Yeah, yeah, many hours of flying.
He certainly enjoyed his flying.
Yes, he was a pilot. I know that he went into the war as a simple soldier when he could have had the privilege of going in as an officer, and he refused that. He said, no, I want to start from boot camp. And that's what he did, and he slowly worked his way up. And I don't know, he had some meetings with Henry Fonda, I know, while he was there. They met and saw each other and had some discussions, but...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they did. But unfortunately, I don't know all the more details of the facts. I have a lot of letters that he wrote to a very, very dear friend of his, Orson Welles, during the whole period. And his recollections of that are very, very interesting. But the way he describes it in this 5 or 6 page letter is incredible, because he also had skills as a writer. He never really wrote a book. He was starting to write an autobiography, but I think he stopped after about 10 pages or something like that, something ridiculous. He didn't want to do too much revealing, I don't think. But through his letters, he was an incredibly good letter writer.
I've run into several men over the years that actually flew with him while he was in the armed services, and just really thrilled to meet me, not having anything to do with him being a star or anything, but because he flew with them, and just really down to earth, and just saying what a good pal he was, and just one of the guys, and they really bonded, and all of that, and that was really nice. Because their reaction to him had nothing to do with, oh, this is a movie star, he's different than us. It was really about, this was one of us, and really wanting to take the time with me to express what a great guy they thought he was.
For him, it was normal. He liked it. I think he put himself in the place of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I used to study photos for hours trying to spark a memory, but no, all I have is the actual photograph. No, unfortunately, no. In my dreams, I've dreamt of him many times and had conversations with him in my dreams. But in real life, no.
I have a lot of memories of riding on a man's back in the pool, and it smelt of copper tone. Yeah, I've often thought, I used to think how different my life would have been, I think, if he hadn't died when he did.
Well, I would think, why go so soon? Stick around a little longer. It would have been nice.
I didn't actually realize the death of my father till many years later. it didn't sink in till I was growing up later in Rome. It actually just, I didn't feel the loss till years later. And then instead of feeling it less and less, it started growing and growing. I felt more and more his loss as years went by. Strange.
Well, he died of a massive heart attack.
A heart attack on the set of Solomon. Yeah.
Yeah.
After a strenuous fight.
Apparently, he'd had some heart problems. Remember, you were telling me that he'd gone to the doctor and he said, something's wrong with their machines. I'm not going to pay any attention to that.
Yeah, I think he'd gone to some clinic somewhere.
Yeah.
Even, and
and he was smoking
non-stop.
And he drank. And
he was a chain smoker.
So there was probably a lot of stress. And what I'd heard is that also he was just stressed out, period, at that point in his life. So
yeah, he was dealing with George Sanders and didn't feel well, got really pale. They stopped and they took him back to his trailer, and apparently he had a shot of brandy or something in the trailer, which they thought was a good thing. Turns out that's like the worst thing you can possibly give to anybody having a heart attack. And a few minutes later, he sort of sat up and grabbed his chest, and that was it. I guess they rushed him to Madrid, but I don't know if he was dead by the time they got there or not. What I can't believe is they didn't have like a doctor on the set then.
It took way too long to get him to the hospital in Madrid. If that had happened in New York, he would have.
I mean, think about these days with a star on the set. They've got a medical staff right there, and you're in a helicopter on your way to the nearest.
But that was 1958.
Yeah, it was not a good place to have a heart attack at that point.
Yeah, I've never known how to answer that. First of all, the junior thing always kind of freaked me out because I'm really the fourth. It's a long line of guys named Tyrone in this family. I think he didn't want to be the one, mess it up and be the last one. It's like, now I have a son named Tyrone, and so I'm off the hook. Now it's his turn. Lightning won't strike me now. But I know he wanted to have a son. I think most men want to have a son, at some point. And I don't know if he knew I was a son or not. I've had certain people that have just been so kind and gracious and friendly to me because of experiences they had with my father or because of their regard for him. By the same token, there's always somebody out there that's going to be predisposed the other way and go, oh yeah, sure, pal. You're not riding that wave. I'm not cutting you any slack. So that's just, you got to take people one at a time and as they come.
I still find it today when I go to the memorial, people, fans and their memories and people who worked with him, people in the service who'd worked with him and because I have my own personal relationship with him, and then there's the collective relationship, and then there's the public relationship, and in a way it's somebody else that they're admiring. It's not the person that I tend to relate to as Daddy. So that amazes me too. I think, wow, look at all the things he did. Wow, look at what he accomplished and the places he went and the people he worked with and all that. That's sort of like an embellishment to the core essence. It just always amazes me that people remember him like they do and still speak so highly of him and all their memories, and because that is something that I found hard to live up to. because I too had a lot of doors open, homes open up to me, people open up to me because I was his daughter, and they saw something in me through my eyes or something. They could recognize him. I've had a lot of people often say to me, "You look so familiar. Do I know you from somewhere?"
I think I would say that the thing that gets me the most about him is that I get this really strong impression that, I mean, as Linda said, he really cared about his craft. He really wanted to be the best actor he could possibly be, but he never totally bought into the whole stardom thing. He mocked it a little bit. He didn't buy in to how big he was. Always treated people simply and kindly and cared about the work. He didn't care about his own superstardom, whatever that meant. He kind of made fun of it a little bit. It says a lot about the man.